Hi, Martin. Hi, Max.
Hey there. How's it going?
Oh, I'm doing well. How have you been, Martin? I haven't seen you in this year.
Yeah. Actually, haven't seen you this year.
Good for you then.
Wow, or you? I don't know which way around, but
maybe.
no, I'm good. I'm good. Apart from my suspension's broke on my car, so I may.
Suspension?
Yeah, I may get a knock on the door from the person who's going to tow it to a garage. But
how did you break the suspension? Did it just go, or did you hit a big bump, or what happened?
I pulled off my drive and it just went.
Oh.
So one side of the car is lower than the other, and I can't drive it. So.
Well, can you ask them to put hydraulic lifts in, so then you can intentionally have your car
It does look a bit of a kind of pimped up low rider car at the moment. It doesn't really suit me, but yeah. Other than that, all good. You?
Nothing too exciting or crazy this week that comes to mind. Went to the dentist. That's about the extent of it. So normal life things. And they made fun of me again for not flossing. I'm like, okay. You would think after all these years you'd learn I'm the not floss guy. Yeah. I break out the dance. Exactly.
That Max is thinking, who are these pair?
Exactly.
Hey, I think they're used to everybody not flossing at this point.
Hi, Max.
Hey there.
So we've been threatening for a while to have education talk on Teams Fridays, and Max is our education expert. Could you introduce yourself a little, Max? Tell us, who you are and how you got into Teams for Education.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody, Max Fritz, and I'm a product manager on our Teams for Education group, or realistically, education group focused on Teams. Not that matters. I work on all sorts of stuff centered around our classroom experiences. I specifically work a little bit on more on our higher education stuff, but I work with plenty of people in primary and secondary, K-12, you name it. Colleges, universities, everybody in between. A lot of stuff in Teams assignments and some of our lightweight learning management style capabilities, VLE, if you will. And I've been doing this for, almost 3 years now. I joined Microsoft in our healthcare field, actually, and just kind of stumbled across this opportunity. I've always done education stuff on and off, and it was a perfect fit.
Yeah, so you kind of stumbled into it. You didn't. It's not like you had an education degree or something, and then
no. I will never claim to be the PhD in education or anything like that.
So I guess you were quite. If it's 3 years ago, that would have been like 2020, and I'm thinking that was a very, very busy time for Teams in education.
Yeah, kind of exploded. Had definitely had a lot of remote learning just jump the need for Teams in education, and not just a lot of people jump to the hybrid learning or remote learning that we all know and maybe love, depending on if you had young kids at the time and had to go through being the supervisor for that.
That was me.
/ tech support / emotional support. But and that's great stuff. We've got tons of students still utilizing Teams for hybrid learning, more by choice now as opposed to by necessity, which is just wonderful. But what's really interesting is the amount of institutions and schools that picked up using Teams for the classroom collaboration. The distributing of content, work assignments, reading materials, some real interesting stuff that we've introduced in the space of helping with reading literacy and some accessibility needs that have really shown that Teams can be a supplement to an in-person classroom. And we've seen a lot of schools just jump at that.
Yeah, I guess my experience was I think in the UK, a lot of schools did different things, particularly at the start. I think lockdown number 1, we didn't do any. Lockdown 2, we then went to stream videos, and I was consuming videos in stream, teaching 2 kids. And then on the other hand, some other schools, maybe more middle schools, my children were at first school, we're using Teams and meetings, perhaps for teaching in classrooms. But yeah, I mean, for me, I do a lot in Teams, kind of calling meetings, not on the education side. But what can you do now in Teams for Education? Because I've seen assignments and some other things pop up, but I've not dabbled a lot with it. And my children are in first school, so haven't got that far yet.
Yeah. Gosh, we have so much stuff in there now. Hopefully everybody watching is familiar with, your not generic, but your Teams meetings. Not the education stuff, but
yeah, I was gonna say I know nothing about the education stuff, but Teams meetings I'm pretty good at.
I'll get into the education stuff, but some of the stuff in Teams meetings has been really exciting for the education space recently. And some of those things, I'm not sure if you guys have talked about on here recently, but some things like the new sign language view that allows an interpreter to be highlighted. Like,
that looks really cool.
That's a really big deal for us. And something we just rolled out 2 days ago, which is meeting templates for education. So if you are a Microsoft Education customer, we haven't had any blog about this. You're hearing about this right now for the first time, unless you follow the roadmap really carefully. You go to create a new meeting, you hit that little drop down. And in addition to seeing webinars on there, you're going to see class meeting and lecture, which allows you as an educator to go and create a templatized meeting preset with all the meeting options that we believe are the right ones for you to control the class, keep things safe. And those younger class meetings, keep things a little bit more open, but still control who's allowed in the lecture meetings. So do be sure to check those out. Those are fun to put together in there.
Are they sort of, because I think Teams Premium is bringing kind of meeting templates, but are those available with education SKUs versus premium?
Those two are available to all our education customers, regardless of premium status. But it's kind of like we took the Teams Premium meeting templates, or meeting guides as they're calling them, and we said we really need to provide an easier way for those educators to set their meeting options. Let's give education these two out of the box.
So Martin, Martin, you mentioned SKUs just now. So I just wanted, what are core differentiators between like the A1, A3 SKUs and the E1s that I am familiar with, E1, E3?
Yeah.
So what all do you get in the A SKUs you don't get? And is there stuff you don't get in the A that you do get in the equivalent E? Or
so it's actually really almost identical. So the A1, A3, A5 SKUs, for those who aren't familiar, are education SKUs from Microsoft 365. And they're meant to mirror the E1, E3, and E5. And there's just a few tiny minor differences in how those SKUs work in terms of some stuff around live events and recordings. That we did some grace periods for live events at the A1 SKU, and recordings you can't keep as long at the A1 SKU. But here's the key thing. If you are in education, that A1 SKU, as long as you are a verified education institution, you have a .edu, or you can work with us to provide the right proof. If you don't have a .edu, that A1 is something that we give out at no charge to education institutions across the world, which is why it has just a tiny bit fewer features than your E1 SKU. But besides that, it's really meant to mirror.
So what happens if you run a not-for-profit that is focused on educating the community? Does that count for an A SKU?
No, it does not.
trying to get some free licenses, man. we're chartered as an educational group, but not a school.
I run a user group over here in Minnesota in the US. We don't get it either. I will get in trouble if I try to remember the restrictions directly myself, but they are very, very specific with a few of those international organizations that education institutions have to be registered with. The .edu, though, if you've got a .edu on your domain, you're smooth sailing on in.
I mean, that's like $15 and I can have one.
Oh no, it's not.
Is it? I don't know. I hear you use that they're gated.
Getting a .edu is a
right.
months-long process gated by a whole bunch of stuff.
All right. There goes the
might-
workaround.
It might be more expensive for us to create a school than it would be just to buy a license.
Oh, it will
Correct.
be. And then, yeah, at the A3 and A5 level, you're getting very similar to E3 and E5. Our A5 SKU is extremely focused on security, just like the E5 SKU. But in the same way that your E1, E3, E5 don't really have any differences in what you get from out of Teams, you're going to see the same for education.
So does Teams, so you mentioned in meetings you get the new templates. Is that because Teams sees you have an A license assigned? So it's like, oh, you get this feature, and you have an E or a G license, you don't get it.
That's right.
Okay. So what's happening with Teams rooms? I know it's in my world is starting to check licenses and not letting you sign in if you have the wrong license type.
Let's see if I can.
Yeah, I saw a little flashy thing. I'm like, there's an MTR back there.
Gotta have fun with that guy.
So yeah, go ahead.
The one big difference that almost I feel like I'm here to talk about is that there are features for education that are specifically built for education. So Teams for Education. So really, you get these 3 additional templates when you create a team. You can see class teams, which are meant for your actual classes or courses to be together, distribute assignments, to collaborate, everything you could do inside of a team. There's a bunch of features I can talk through. There's PLC teams, which are for professional learning communities, which a lot of educators use at that primary, secondary, kind of K-12 level to collaborate with each other. And then you get staff teams, which are meant specifically for staff at an institution to collaborate with each other. And we've thrown some unique things in each of those templates, but the class team template is the one that we spend a lot of time working on. That's where our assignments go. It's where a lot of exciting work that I can only hint at right now is coming, that you should check out the Reimagine Education event. Just type that in your little Bing search and register for that next month.
So Teams for Education is way more than just breakout rooms. Because when I saw breakout rooms, I'm like, oh, that's for education. And they, we're never going to use it.
We really needed and wanted those breakout rooms.
Isn't it? So yeah, it's coming or not coming and coming to Teams rooms. Is that a big use case in education? Or is that just more like, it's, let's make sure all the Teams devices can join the different meeting templates or meeting layouts?
We do have quite a good handful, larger than a handful of institutions and schools using Teams rooms in the classroom. A lot of them outfitted during the pandemic to really support that hybrid learning that we kept bouncing back and forth between. And we've seen in higher ed, especially at some of those institutions that are trying to provide choices to students of, it's okay if you don't come to class in person, or maybe we're going to have a way for you to register for classes here and say you're not coming in person at all, to provide that that experience. If you went to college anytime in the past, let's say 30 years, you probably 30. Had a
technically, yes.
You probably had a lectern with a podium and a computer at the front and a projector or a screen of some sort, and the professor put the content up in there. We're seeing a lot of those being equipped with Teams meeting rooms now.
Or a lamp with a little see-through plastic thing you would write on with a marker and then
that
put on
too. I had that.
Overhead project. No, it wasn't no HP.
I forget what those are called, but that's my era. Sometimes they're fancy. You can turn the crank, and then go to the next one, then turn the crank and go to the next one to get a new screen. You turn the crank. You didn't have to take the sheet off and put a new clean one on. And a good teacher will have written or already written everything and then put a dark sheet of paper over the top and just slide it down to expose the light so that you could then see it. I'm like, this teacher prepares, or this teacher wrote this class 7 years ago and is just reusing 7 years of worth of work, but work smarter, not harder. I mean, seriously, the first president of the United States has changed in the last 7 years. You write that class once and you can use it for the next 50. Maybe update to more woke wordage every now and then, but otherwise you're in good shape.
I was going to ask, is there any sort of big features that kind of came out of the big remote learning era, COVID? Like Together Mode, was that one of them? Breakout rooms, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, so from Teams meetings perspective, breakout rooms and Together Mode were huge for education.
Yeah, I can imagine seeing everybody kind of in a
breakout rooms. You know, it's just a instructional tool in a physical classroom to say, okay, now break into small groups and work on XYZ or talk about XYZ. Not being able to do that at remote learning is a huge loss. So having that is necessary. And Together Mode, being able to see all your students together at once and remove distractions of what may be in their real background or the virtual background that they chose. Especially for those younger students, making them feel a little bit more comfortable that this is like a class. I'm right next to my friend, kind of a deal. Seating assignments in Together Mode, which came out a few months ago. That was the final thing to make this.
Is that a huge one?
What was that?
That was a huge one. I figured when they did that was straight for education, but you know, I guess is that so that the instructor can see, like, you know, Johnny will always be here, Alice will always be here, Sally will always be here, Bobby will always be there.
Yep.
I guess that's like my son. They always have their same spot in the classroom.
Exactly like that.
It's funny, isn't it? These may seem little things, but make a huge difference like that.
Yeah, but outside of meetings, a few interesting things came out of the pandemic. Our Reflect capabilities inside of Teams for Education, where you can, as an educator, ask your students to check in. So basically, you put out a Reflect request, if you will, and you say, "How are you feeling today?" And the students can respond with a range of emojis. If you've ever used Viva Insights, for example, it's very similar to that. It's just a little bit more touchy-feely, educationized. We like to talk about the feelings monster. It actually will show the students, okay, you can choose your feelings monster. How are you feeling today? Which is very much a younger student thing. If you're a higher education professor listening right now, you can ignore this part. But being able to check in and understand how students are feeling, great. Very important for remote learning. Also really good to see what's going on with your students, even with in-person learning. Things that you may not get from students who are a little bit more shy in the classroom, maybe not as verbal, maybe not as expressive, and going and asking that, sitting down with that student in person and trying to get how they're feeling sometimes is too intimidating for that student. So getting a sense from your class of how things are going, how are you feeling today? How are your friendships going? All the way to more academic related things of how did the past unit for you go? What worked well? Yes, the feelings monster in Microsoft Teams. This is exactly it. Thank you for rolling this up, because this puts a little bit of UI to what I was talking about here. But you really put these posts out for your students, and we have a bunch of templatized ones that are, as you saw in that drop down just for a second there, they're categorized by learning related or feelings related.
Wow, look at him.
Yeah.
I'd rather use feeling monster as an adult than some smiley face or a thumbs up or something.
You know, we should tell our Viva team that.
Yeah, I'm like, well, it's you know, I'm old, so Windows NT, but way back in the day, 3.5, 3.1, it was always boring because businesses don't want fun. Businesses need a business desktop, and then Windows 95 is fun. And it's like, that was incorrect then. It is incorrect today. People are people. We want to have fun at work. Otherwise, it's boring. So give me the feelings monster, Microsoft.
Martin can probably attest to this too. But and this is an old stat that I cannot back up with any evidence, but that I'm going to ask Martin to attest to anyways. But I heard once back while I was working on a healthcare team that the number one, how do I phrase it right? That the feature that would make your users most upset by turning it off, and this is not education, this is enterprise, is GIFs in Teams. People get like, out of all the features you could turn off, GIFs will upset your user base the most. People want to have fun.
And do you know on Reddit how many times I see people complaining about the emojis? They're ugly. They're terrible. Oh, now that we have 1,000 of them, there's still 1,000 ugly emojis. I'm like, really? I have one Skype link. Skype put some out and they were trash. But
Yeah.
Microsoft did a full refresh like 8 years ago, 7 years ago, and they've been fine. They're fine. Like, really, that's what you're getting fired up about? Your life's in really good shape.
I worked with some customers who had it enabled to start with, then they were turned off, and they were not happy. And then quite soon after that, they appeared back again.
Yep.
So that little bit of fun. So I need the was it the feelings monster? I think he needs to make a
feelings monster,
or at least be in. He could be everywhere. He could be on the reactions. He could be everywhere. In Viva.
Yeah. There's a few other features that came out of the pandemic that are really intriguing. If I miss some of these, my education colleagues are going to come ring my doorbell over the weekend and say, "Hey, why don't you talk about my feature?" But just a few other ones. Insights in education, which is like an analytical dashboard that can show you what's going on inside of your class team. It can let you know ahead of time which students are potentially falling behind, who's engaged, who's not. And while some educators may use this for grading style purposes, it's not really meant for that. It's meant to help identify students who may need that extra help before it's too late. And so, you'll see in here that we can see what's going on at an individual class level. It gives you some immediate insights at the top here of inactive students, people who are late on things. Yeah. It allows you as the educator to send a message to people immediately.
Do they send it as a robot? No way. Sorry.
We get all the fun graphics.
Right.
Look how fun it is with all even Shakespeare at the top there.
Hey, our team's icons in education are a lot more fun.
You have different icons.
Yes, we do. We have like 50 different icons that you can use for your team out of the box, or you can upload your own, just like you can.
I think we might be building that school, Michael.
Yeah, this might be worth the $10,000 just to get a free A1 license.
Is that like a class where I guess that as we've seen it in enterprise, that's a team, but in this case it's
so a class team is just a team with our extra apps loaded on top.
So you got your assignments, grades, class notebook.
Yes, class notebook. Now, class notebook existed long before the pandemic, but class notebook brings you a OneNote template, and this is just so cool. So this OneNote is for your class, and you've got 3 important sections in there. You've got a kind of read-only section, a content library for the educator to publish content. It's like your virtual textbook. The educator puts content in there that students can read only. Then you've got an open collaboration area where the educators and students can all collaborate together, used really commonly in remote learning or hybrid learning or group learning sessions where, hey, let's all work on this together. And then you've got a private space for every student where the instructor can see what's going on and they can actually work in there too, but it's meant for the students to have a private space that the teacher or instructor can oversee, can potentially grade work from there, or just provide feedback to a student as they're working on something. I mean, even in higher education, you're working on a paper that's a 3-week long paper that you're working on. Instead of sending drafts back and forth, you've got it in OneNote, and the educator can kind of check in on you and say, hey, I love what you're doing. You should look at this a little bit more.
All within that class notebook.
All within that class notebook. the most popular feature we have in Teams
Wow.
for Education.
Now, is that technically a OneNote feature? Because I know OneNote has been used for education a lot with a lot of interesting use cases, like helping kids learn to read or who have reading difficulties. OneNote has some things. So is that kind of leveraging OneNote features, or is that
Yes.
like team specific?
So the class notebook is a OneNote notebook. It'll open in OneNote within Teams, or it will open in OneNote on the web or OneNote desktop, anything like that. Now, class notebook existed before Teams even was a thing.
Right.
And you can technically use class notebook without Teams, but now it is built into our class teams. So if you set up a class team, and get your students in there as members of the team, the class notebook will be ready for you with a single click. Now, for any IT administrators out there, I should mention we have a technology called School Data Sync, which has improved a lot throughout the last couple of years.
I've heard of
School
this.
Data Sync allows you to connect your student information system, which for those who aren't EDU, that's kind of like your CRM of classes, or ERP more appropriately. It's got all your students in there. It's got what classes they're in, and even some demographics information. But we'll ingest that information, and we'll create a team for every one of your classes for that school year or semester or term. And those classes sit this is another fun feature, in a non-activated state. So only the owners of those teams can see them. They can prep the material, get everything ready for the school year, and hit an activate button. And then the students will be able to be let in, and they'll see the teams too.
Oh, that's nice. So you can prep your classroom or
Yes.
class.
But if you are an IT administrator at a school, that is something you got to look into, because no educator likes to go and have to add all their students one by one and then deal with the ridiculous amount of adds and drops that happen throughout that term.
Now, can you do grading within Teams or progress reports, whatever? So does that sync back to the school system that tracks the users, the CRM, for lack of a better word, whatever the education equivalent is of a
Student
CRM?
Information System, SIS. Yes, so we do grade right back to the SIS. School Data Sync, you can think of kind of happening in bidirectionally. If it will ingest the enrollment information, and that happens on a sync cycle, so that we can continue to get those updates and changes that definitely do happen. And then we can do grade right back from those class teams for the student grades, for those final grades, to make it back into the system.
So on those write backs, is there like an industry standard in education, or is it just like, here's a JSON file, have fun? Like, is there like, if you write it in this format, the top 37 programs will be able to read it, or is it not quite that standardized?
The grade write back is less standardized than the enrollment. The enrollment data, one roster standard is used pretty frequently, and we can ingest that, and we can also hit some specific APIs. It's a very it's not complicated to set up. It's just complicated how it works. So I'd recommend that people go to sds.microsoft.com, and you can check it out there. And if you're an education institution, you can literally request assistance right then and there. I should make sure that's the right URL.
Yeah, it looks that way. I'm about to present this screen, so this should be it.
Microsoft School Data Sync.
Yeah. So SIS, that's what you're talking about. Man, it's like, it's almost like a test. You said all this stuff. Is it accurate? Yep. He's all this. Nailed it.
One roster. It's on there.
So is there specific kind of, it says SIS partners integrate. Is there specific kind of schools, CRMs, school systems that are certified or integrated?
So with the link that, actually I'm not sure which link you clicked. Yep, you clicked the right one. It lists in here which APIs we can work with. So the OneRoster API is really the key ones we can work with, as well as PowerSchool API, which is a very common student information system that appears in those primary, secondary, K-12 institutions. So we can work with OneRoster API, PowerSchool API, or we can grab
Yeah.
your content via CSV files.
Are we getting a phone call?
I was. I've just
Apparently,
Yeah.
Teams does not depress the audio of a Teams phone call.
could you? Well, you could probably hear that through my mic, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it interesting then how PowerSchool is similar to the wording of PowerShell.
Not at all similar.
Totally different.
Very
I guess.
different places and people.
So in the education space, how much are the other ancillary parts of, let's go with Microsoft 365 leveraged? Thinking like Yammer / communities, Viva. We talked Insights. You said it was similar to Viva. So is there other stuff, or is it pretty much just Teams, a little bit of OneNote, and then it's use Yammer if you want? There's nothing special for education.
Yeah. So I'll answer the question twofold. And the way we normally think of education, the teachers and students, educators and students. If you open your Office Waffle and follow along with me, I'm not actually going to do that. I'm just going to go off memory. Things like Sway.
Sway.
Sway is way more used in education than it is in enterprise. Sway is a great way for students to build content to share out.
Did it start in education and come to enterprise? It did. Okay.
It started for education. I think it may have. I don't think it was gated for education though. I do not remember.
But yeah, I remember when it first came out. I dabbled with it.
Yep.
But then, yeah, I know because I'm very much on the commercial side. People are like, Sway still exists? That's a Microsoft product? And you're saying, yeah, it exists and we love it.
We've got a lot of educators who swear by it. Things like Forms. Forms is actually heavily used in education. And in fact, if you go into a class team and you click create an assignment, you're prompted with, do you want to create an assignment or a quiz? And if you create a quiz, we guide you through creating a Microsoft form as a quiz that you can use. And there's been a lot of Forms features that we've been really excited about over the past year or two, timed assessments being one of them, so that you've got those features in Forms. OneDrive and SharePoint, just the backbone of everything for all of our customers, regardless of industry, so including education for file storage. But then as we get into some of the other content, what I always try to remind people of is education is a business just as much as any other enterprise or commercial entity. We talked about Viva Insights, and I said that we've got Reflect, and that's great for the students. But hey, we want your employees to be able to check in too. Use Viva Insights. We've got these class teams which are meant for learning. That's great for the students, but professional development and learning content for staff. We've got Viva Learning, the whole Viva suite for that matter. I can go on and on. You've got all sorts of content and features across the Microsoft suite. Everything you think of that you use if you're a non-education person is probably used by education faculty and staff as well.
So we have a question here from Thomas here. Can the Insights call out a student whose grade was off by more than one letter? And then he follows up, say an A student gets a C. So is there I guess maybe where he's heading is if a kid's trailing off,
trend.
Is there a way for a teacher to recognize that easily and take speak with them, check their feelings monster over the last couple of days, or
So we do have a student support area. I don't believe I got to check with my Insights team on this. I don't believe it's going to tell you if a specific student has unusual grades based on their
history,
their past history, but it will tell you if a student is doing poorly in general. And poorly is probably not the right word to use there, but if somebody needs that extra level of support. We do, on an individual student basis, we do definitely show interesting pieces of information of if a digital participation for a specific student has gone down. So we can tell you if somebody's started their assignments later than usual or accessed fewer class materials than they did the previous week or things like that. So Yeah, a lot of different capabilities in there. I'm just not sure about that exact one.
So a thought that crossed my mind is the students don't need a license, right? They just A1 or whatever and off they go.
Well, students do need a license. So just like Microsoft 365 for enterprise and commercial, every user must be licensed. In fact, the identity security for education is extremely important to make. Schools are one of the biggest attack targets lately, unfortunately, because people know that they have lower budgets for security, and that the compliance laws are pretty serious. So schools will do a lot to get their data back. It's a sad reality. But yeah, you need to have your user's license. They need to have all of the fun identity side on Azure AD.
So how do you handle it? And again, for like colleges, universities, not a problem. Everyone's 18 and over mostly. How do you handle it for like an 8-year-old getting an identity? Because I'm thinking like, if they sign in as a guest account, they'd have to have a pre-existing email address, which they may not. So how do you onboard a new 4th grade student?
So crazy as it sounds, and if you're a parent of a younger student right now, you're gonna say, yeah, it is crazy. When you start school, depending on what school you're at and what grade you're at, most 3rd graders are getting usernames and passwords now from their school.
Yeah, during lockdown, we got that, and then I dug in, and that's how we were watching stream videos. We must have had an A1 account. My son and daughter had Teams. They had access to stream, email, and I was like, what?
Yep. I don't know of any school, and I'm sure somebody can prove me wrong right now, that is using guest accounts for their students. That is a little bit of a logistical nightmare. And proving that, this is actually the student, not some random person submitting content, which is a whole nother ballgame. But yeah, we're issuing identities to students. And usernames and passwords. And at the younger levels, the parents are absolutely involved in that. We generally hope that the parent has the username and password too. In fact, I believe a lot of schools issue it directly to the parents first.
Right.
But yeah, everybody's getting a username and password, and that's how we do the enrollment, and that's how we do grading and all that stuff.
All right. So what's new? Looks like a couple days ago, there's a bunch of new stuff rolling out.
Well, there's always new stuff, of course.
Yeah. So what's the new hotness?
So new for Teams for Education. Let's look at my list.
There's like a Jupyter notebook, insights for rubrics. I don't even know what these words are. Jupyter spelled wrong or right. So, rubrics, new updates to Reflect. I'm like, what's Reflect?
We just put out a bunch of fake words, hoping you don't notice.
Yeah. You know what? I guess I need to go back to school. We now spell Jupiter with a Y now, not an I. And you need to update. And Pluto's not a planet, or is it again? Like, I don't know.
I think the latest is no.
I think they're hanging on to no. It's like a dwarf planet. It's like they made up a new term for Pluto. It's like, it's kind of a planet, but it's not. It's a dwarf planet. What?
I didn't know
that. So okay, let's start with Jupyter Notebooks. Spelled right with a Y. So Jupyter Notebooks are basically they're a way to put together documents and code and text and visualizations and stuff like that for the Python language specifically. So this is very computer science oriented and programming oriented, which is happening at younger and younger levels.
Yeah,
the kids are coding, but it's a very common way to share a large set of information and work on information in the Python languages. So it's like, okay, so here's the thing you're going to do next in Python, X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on it myself, but we do have there are a lot of education institutions that use these really heavily. And we wanted them to be able to be inside of Teams assignments so that you can assign out a Jupyter notebook and ask students to do that assignment. And the coolest thing is it provides you a full runtime environment directly inside of Teams, inside of our assignment service. Not that the windows are getting smaller, just visualizing here. It allows you to put together your Python code and run it. For example, and I'm just reading off one of the screenshots on the blog. Like you put a question in there as an educator saying, print a sentence that announces your name and age that uses variables you've created from your previous question. Hello, my name is blank and I am blank years old. And you put together a print statement that uses concatenating text and variables, and teams can execute right there to show you that it works. Really cool stuff that my partner PM Life and his team have been working on for a while.
So is Jupyter Notebook like a generic thing, or like a Python thing, or is this like or is it a third-party application for purchase?
No, it's a Python thing.
It's a Python thing.
I'm sure I came across Jupyter Notebooks when I was doing and dabbling with Azure Sentinel, with some of the solutions, and it was a similar thing about you could document things and run code or Python, and yeah, it kind of went over my head, but I do remember, I think I did see, I was like, why is Jupyter spelled like that? But
yeah, I don't want to say this definitively, but I believe Jupyter Notebook is open source.
Yeah, I think it is across different kind of, yeah, I think it is as well.
Yes, it's built on open source libraries, at least.
One of the other new things that seems interesting to me is phonics rules challenge assignments in reading progress. So I know what each one of those words individually means, but put together in that form of a phonics rules challenge assignment, I don't know what that is.
So reading progress. Let's start with the end of your.
Yes, reading progress. Yes, those are the end.
So reading progress is a new tool that actually it's not very new anymore. It's almost a year old, probably, maybe even a little bit more. I have to check with my buddy Mike Wolfson on that one. But reading progress is a tool for educators to assign passages to students. And those students open them up in Teams. They turn on their microphone and ideally their camera, and they record themselves reading those passages.
Okay.
Really important things for students to know how to read, obviously. And we used to do these in individual sessions with students. I remember in third grade being taken out of the classroom into a private room and being told, okay, read this paragraph. And
You went to fancy school.
I was assessed on it.
My school, we had 2 grades and 1 teacher at the same time. So first and second were together, third and fourth, fifth and sixth. So we didn't have time to have private time with the teacher.
Maybe that was just a me thing. But what we're hoping, what we're seeing now is that we need to be more proactive with figuring out progress from readers. And so what happens is we use AI, fun buzzword, on these recordings and show the educator, okay, and the student for that matter, here are the vowels that here are the words that they did well with, here are the syllables that they needed help with, here's where they're slower, faster, all sorts of different things that that these specific educators that deal with reading are very, very interested in. And it gets to the point of kind of gamifying it. Oh, we lost him.
He messaged me. He's got to probably help his kids with their homework.
Yep.
He's now going to. Maybe I should actually listen to my children reading. I always read to them. They got a good idea. Hold on, I've been a poor father.
So these students basically read these passages, and the educator can provide them new passages based on what they did well, what they didn't, and help with that individualized support. And what Phonics Rules Challenges does is help them with, as it sounds, the phonics. So we can use some software analysis that we're doing on words at the phenome level to give accuracy ratings per individual phonemes so that students can actually have a better idea, and educators, of where they're struggling with phonemes and where they need help. It's incredible. It's an area that I had no idea even existed, but it makes sense that,
Right.
these are things that we need to pay attention to as students are working.
So I don't want to make this a competitive discussion, but are the other competitors in this whatever remote learning software teams land, are they doing things like this as well, or is this where Microsoft is taking a lead, or is Microsoft catching up, or a little of everything?
We, somebody in the online comments is going to go, "You're wrong," but we're really taking the lead in a lot of these advanced areas like reading progress and insights. That we're being pretty innovative here, and we're working pretty directly with um, educators themselves, instructional technologists, phonics specialists, um, student well-being focused individuals, just everybody across the board on trying to make sure that we are building what people actually need instead of just what exists out there and making sure we have it too.
And how often do you run into schools using, Zoom and Teams, or is everybody like always just one?
Oh no, we run across everything. Sure, yeah.
Like, I
I
have a
see
buddy who
school.
works for a virtual school, like they've always been virtual, and
Yeah.
they use Zoom with the students, but Teams with the staff and
Oh gosh,
administration.
if I had a dollar. Um, yeah, I'm not gonna lie to anybody here and say no, I don't see schools using Zoom because you all do too. Um, we're definitely seeing a bit of a shift though. In this, I I don't know if post pandemic is the right term yet, but in the latest world that we're in of uh, you know we see it in the news all the day, right, all day long right now, that uh, organizations, institutions, everybody is consolidating their tech spend. um, and so for that school that's using Teams for their faculty and staff and Zoom for their remote learning, those sorts of schools are being faced with tough decisions right now of, oh, hey, we have we're dealing with budget cuts. Hey, IT, where can we cut spending? Where do we have duplicative
Right.
spending? And while that was acceptable during the pandemic because there were increased budgets for it and everybody was offering a discount,
Yep.
that's not flying anymore. Um, so we are seeing a lot of institutions and schools consolidating back onto Teams of, well, we're utilizing our M365 contract for these 7 other things. We're not going to get rid of Teams, and uh, Teams is definitely to the point now where it's pretty hard to make the argument that there are features in Zoom that we can't compete with.
All right. Um, starting to wrap up. For those who were at the beginning, the tow truck is there for Martin's car, who lost its suspension, so he stepped away. Kind of maybe one of my last decent questions, assuming I had decent questions before. Services. How, if you're a school, and what kind of professional services and support is there to bring up new features, move to Teams? I mean, initially during the pandemic, it was like, just turn it on and we'll figure it out. Now that era is possibly past, what kind of services are out there? But Microsoft directly, third parties, how do you like optimize and learn about these new features?
Yeah. Well, let's start with onboarding, an actual school itself. Fast Track. Microsoft Fast
Fast
Track
Track does it as well. Okay.
Yep, we have education fast track specialists. Same restrictions. I think something like 500 or 250 licenses, something
Right.
like
Enough
that.
to get you start pointed in the right direction and up and running, but not long-term support.
Yep, we have a whole bunch of education partners additionally that are specialized in education who can provide more of that high touch support. I'm going to pull up that link and make sure that we get that out there. But we actually just put together a new landing page for our education partners, so I got to find that. And then we like to believe that the content we have out on Microsoft Learn, so both the interactive learning video-based content, as well as the information we have on the docs articles on Learn. It's a lot out there. We are, I mean, Michael, you can probably attest to this from being a former Microsoftie, and we keep those articles up to date. It is
it's a lot of
core
work
requirement.
keeping
If we
those up to
change
date.
a service, we update an article. Just how it works. So if you're a person like me who you like to just figure it out,
Right.
the articles are out there for your reading.
Figuring out is good, but if you're dealing with, I mean, it just seems, I don't know, maybe because I'm not in that world, it just seems like you have to be more conscientious when you're dealing with, children, teenagers, and how you're going to implement versus adults. So on the commercial side, where you just kind of like, I can wing it. our adults are, experienced. They can kind of figure it out.
Yeah, it's different. We have a lot of training partners and training resources internally. I don't want to say famously, but it sure hit the news. It was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when we shut down the Microsoft stores, and all of those employees were offered training positions within Microsoft. So we have a pretty large group of trainers now who are quite good at that. If they were a stores employee, they were doing training already in the stores, and so a good segment of them have been dedicated towards education as well, to sitting down with teachers, educators, faculty, staff, and helping get them ready to teach.
All right,
and then we have I would be remiss if I didn't mention, if you go to education.microsoft.com, we have just a whole bunch of resources that are specific on Microsoft Learn to all of our education products, some that I talked about today, some that I didn't even have a chance to touch on. The instructional side of things, of how to use Microsoft technologies in the best way there. So if you click Browse Educator Training, there's just a ton of stuff there. Just a ridiculous amount of stuff. If you scroll down, you'll see that we have a Microsoft Educator program, which is a way that you can become trained specifically for Microsoft technologies in the classroom. And if you get innovative enough, you can become a Microsoft Innovative Educator, which is an application-based program, or MIEE, Innovative Educator Expert, and you can really be a part of our communities.
Yeah, and then I'm guessing there's a whole community as well, be it based off Twitter or LinkedIn groups or whatever about this field.
Everywhere, yes.
All right. Well, we're pushing an hour here, so I think it's about time to wrap up. And Martin bailed on us because he has a junky car.
We'll give him a pass this time.
Anything else you want to wrap up with? Any other parting thoughts, or people that I didn't ask, or this is the question you get all the time that I didn't ask? Anything else to close up, or are we good?
What I'll say is that we've got a lot of exciting stuff that we're going to be announcing in March. So.
Is there an event in March?
There is.
Perfect. Share that link as well if you have one.
I'm going to share the link to that right now. Let me just pull that up for you all.
Because we in the Teams, Rooms, and Devices and AV world, a big week is next week at the ISE in Barcelona. It's Europe's biggest event, but the company for whom I work, we will have a big, exciting announcement. I work for Jabra now, so we have a huge announcement coming next week. I'll keep tapping until you find it. Did you find it?
I found it. I'm going to put the link in our chat, and you can make that more public.
Yep.
It's called our Reimagine Education event. It is on Thursday, February 9th at 9 o'clock Pacific. We're also going to have a re-show at 6 o'clock Pacific for anybody in a time zone where that's not so great. The other area that I would suggest you pay attention to is our education blog on the tech community. What's the link to that as well? Because we have some stuff that isn't even going to be in that big event. that we're
Oh,
going to be
you're gonna have a blog listing all the highlights from the Reimagine event.
and some stuff that Reimagine won't even cover.
All right.
We ran out of time.
So there you go, as happens.
Uh-huh. But do check out that Reimagine event. We've got a lot of exciting stuff coming.
And when is that in March?
You're making me jump too many tabs. That is on February 9th.
February 9th. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Max, for Martin as well. Thanks so much. We've been trying, since December of last year. I mean, we did shut down the show for, the holidays. But thanks a lot. Looks like some people have been hanging with us the whole way through. Good feedback so far. So thank you, everyone who's been watching. And, these are all saved on YouTube. So for those of you who want to share this with your administrators, parents, just IT geeks like me who never really learned about this world, please share the YouTube stuff. And Max, thank you so much. Any closing comment, or have you already done, or was that what you just did?
It's been great being here. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm Max A. Fritz on Twitter. You can get a hold of me that way, probably the most easily. And I'd love to chat.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Max. It's been very eye-opening for me. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.